everyone, and welcome back to Squirrel Brain Stories. If you're just tuning in, please go back to watch our previous episodes so that you don't miss out on any of the crazy stories so far. And we're going to pick up where we left off last week. I first wanted to,
Wait, hold on. Who are we?
Oh, shit. I'm Angela.
I'm Adria.
Oh, boy.
And we're your totally put together, completely professional hosts of this wonderful podcast.
Yes, we're trying. So I know you guys have heard me talking a lot about this cult, but I wanted to kind of explain a little bit more before we get started, picking up where we left off, more about this, like logistics, what it looked like, what it looked like on the outside. So this was 3 houses. When it first started, it was, I believe, one house. I believe there was only one house when it first started, but I'm not entirely sure because I was only kept in that one house for a long time. And that was called the Peach House. It was on 5506 Northeast Hoyt Street, about 3 blocks from Portland Providence Hospital, right off of Gleason, between Gleason and I-84. And on the outside, it looked like a normal 3-story house, with 20 cars parked around the block. But it appeared like a normal house, except for you see, all these people going back and forth, tons of people, hundreds of people. And then kitty corner to that block, there was another house, which we called the Blue House. And that was also a 3-story house. And then a block the other way was the King's house.
And that house comes later, though.
Yes,
right?
Yes. That house was added on. I was probably there for a couple years or so, and then they procured that house. But that was also another 3-story house that was full of people. So if you can imagine, these were 3 houses that looked like every other house on the street, except for, way tons more cars. But they appeared like normal houses. There were no church signs saying like Church of whatever. It was just normal houses that had a lot of people. There was at least 60 people in each house. And we had all kinds of people coming and going that didn't live there as well. Excuse me. So some of the names that we used, I'm not really sure why names kept changing, but for a while we were Messengers of the Cross, Mensajeros de la Cruz. We were Returning to Christ. No, Returning to the Cross? Yeah, Returning to the Cross, Retornando a la Cruz. Great Commissions and Ministries. I'm not sure what the names were. Once they moved to Hawaii, they were on Oahu for quite a few years. But I always thought that it was interesting that the names kept changing. Our Daily Bread was also another name. So if any of you guys have ever heard of this cult or any of these names, or if you ever lived there, if you've been a victim, even if you didn't live there, we are here to support your journey to recovery, to healing from this traumatic cult. And we are welcoming, stories from other survivors that have lived in this cult or other places that were associated. We want to share your guys' story too. We want this podcast to be part of your strength, to tell your story as well. And I want to leave that open-ended. If you were a victim and you have a story that you are ready to share, we are here for you. And that will be an open invitation so reach out to us on the email, squirrelbrainstories.gmail. At Gmail. Or you can find us on Facebook.
We're getting our stuff together on Reddit and the other platforms. And
YouTube.
Yeah.
So, I want this to be a platform where we all come together because we've all been victims of abuse, and sharing that way, saying those words, even however many words you can muster up, just saying a few words takes about 10 pounds off of your shoulders. And each time you're able to get a little more strength and say a little bit more and a little bit more, that's a little more weight that you're taking off of your shoulders. And you can share it with, the world. There's no reason why you need to carry this shame, this pain, this trauma. There's no reason why you need to carry this alone.
Yeah. What is it they say? Pain shared is pain lessened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that, because, I've noticed through the years when I first started talking about it, wasn't until after my second marriage. And I'd be like, I was a bar hopper for a couple years because I was trying to figure out what life was about and how to adult on my own. So I was a bar hopper for a little while. And sometimes I'd be at the bar and I was like, I'd meet someone new and I was like, yeah, I lived in a cult. And they're like, oh, or I have a hit on my head, and they're like, oh, and, they would move to the other side of the bar.
See, I would have been like, please tell me more. Tell me everything.
I'm on a hit list. But as time went on, each time I said a little bit more, I felt this release of a little bit of pressure. It felt a little more bearable, if that makes sense.
Do you think it helped strip you of some of the shame that was associated with everything that happened?
I think so, because once I started speaking about it and the reaction I got from people, they're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's me. I'm people.
Well, not only you, but other people, they're like, I don't know if, I'm sure there was times I wasn't believed, because it's such a crazy story. But, I think it is an important piece, together we're stronger.
And that's, I think, one of the reasons why you really wanted to do this podcast is because, yes, we are laying all this foundation with your story specifically, but this is so much bigger than you.
Oh, yeah.
It's so much bigger than this one cult. It is. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. One of our friends, that I grew up with, after we're done with my story, his name is Nico. He was a boy that lived in the cult with me, and he was severely sexually abused by, I don't know, over 10 to 20 brothers that lived at the church. So he has a very, very heavy, strong story. And I'm very excited for him to get this opportunity to tell his story, that he's been carrying this heavy burden for all these years. And I want the rest of you that have the same experiences to have that same opportunity to finally kind of shed some of that burden and that shame, because there is a lot of shame, because you're made to feel that you deserved it because, you weren't a good enough follower, or you didn't obey your husband. And so that's why all these things happen to you. Or, it's not our shame to carry. Let that shame fall back onto them. Let's uncover their faces and uncover the truth and take them out of hiding. They deserve, there's this story, the harm that they've done to all of these children, all of these women, it deserves to be heard. And they don't need it. They don't deserve to be carrying that shame.
Yeah.
Deep breath.
Feeling good?
Yeah.
You ready to talk about the beginning of the end of your marriage?
Yeah. So in the last episode, we were talking about, credit report. And, this was now my second job that I was allowed to work. And I think that the only reason I was allowed to work was because the main leader had went to Hawaii. And so now my prearranged husband needed the money. And, he was responsible for the king's house that he had taken over. And, there was a bunch of people living there. Each person in the house that worked paid, it was like $450 to $500. Each working person paid that much every month.
Like as a tithe, like a donation to the church type thing?
Yeah. So if you have 60 people, they're each paying,
it's quite a racket.
Yeah. And that's how they were able to get these houses so quickly, because once they had the king's house for a while there, they even had a house up in Seattle.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. It was a pretty big house on a big hill. And they sent one of the other leaders up there with his family, and he collected more followers up there in Seattle to live at the house.
And I don't want to spoil it too much for everybody, but you and our wonderful producer, your great husband, Buck, are going to really start breaking down and putting together what that hierarchy looked like.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking about what, 5 or 6 main leaders, including your husband?
There's probably 5 to 6, and then the main leader.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're looking at not a whole lot of people in charge, but enough to have one look over each house and like an extra to go expand.
Yeah, we always did these fellowship or missionary or outreach work. You know, we'd go to other churches, we'd play in the band, because they also had a band. There was a couple bands, actually, and everyone played instruments.
That's very David Koresh of them.
Yeah, I actually that was how they kept tabs on me, was they put me in the band. I had to play the tumbas.
Oh.
And that's why I'm kind of a little deaf in one ear, because I was in front of one of those, 5-foot speakers.
The big ass speakers,
yeah. So that's how they would, before I got married, that's how they kept tabs on me. When they would go to practice, I had to go with them because they told me I was in the band. I had to be in the band. So that's how they kept tabs on what I was doing when the main leader wasn't around.
Yeah, but you were married at that time, right?
No, that was before I was married.
Got it.
Once I was married, I wasn't in the band anymore. Because they didn't need to watch over me. The unmarried girls were part of the band. Because otherwise, what are we going to do 3 hours while they're practicing? We could be doing whatever.
Yeah.
So back to, my job. And so that's kind of how it all began. Was the nurses were talking about the credit report, and I'm like, what the fuck is a credit report? I don't know anything. Like, I just started working a little over a year ago. I don't know about any of this stuff, and I don't know where to find stuff. So they show me where to, one of the nurses, she showed me where to, what site to go to, look for my credit report, pull my credit report. There was probably about $20,000 in credit card debt. None of it, I didn't have credit cards for any of this stuff. I didn't know what in the world it was. And so I'm pretty sure I called to his attention, but that would have gone really well. Yeah. So I was like, my eyes were kind of starting to open. One of my bosses, she was like, I used to be a social worker, and I know something's going on. And if you need to reach out to someone, you should do that. But
let me pause you right there. What was that feeling like? Because this, from an outsider's perspective, not knowing every single detail, this absolutely feels like the first time somebody actually came to you and was like, I know that you're not okay. And it's not my place to force help on you, but there is help. Was that really the first time somebody...
That was the first time that someone ever questioned anything.
How did that feel?
It felt violating.
Like somebody actually saw past the mask of everything is okay that you were trying to put up?
Yeah, and that they were trying to pry and get information. And I tried to brush everything off like it was normal. Like, oh yeah, I just live with all these people, I live in a church, we're a missionary.
Yeah.
Mission. So, she said that, but I'm still in protective mode because I still don't know exactly, I'm starting to see some red flags. The credit report, that was shocking, and I didn't know what to do about it. So I didn't really do anything, but still it made me start questioning things. And when I was working, I was never allowed to drive myself to work. I had to be picked up and I had to be dropped off at work. And if being picked up, if that meant I waited for 30 minutes after I was done working for my ride to get there, then I had to wait because my husband wasn't going to let me drive.
And this is we're still talking about the time where you're working, being punished for withdrawing $20 out of the account that your fucking paycheck goes into, that he's stealing from you, and you still have no access to funds, right?
Or a car.
And then you find out you have $20,000 worth of credit card debt.
Yeah. And then when we were living at the King's house, there, the abuse still continued. If we needed anything, like if the boys were running out of diapers or wipes or anything like that, he was the one that got whatever the boys needed. He wouldn't give me, here's $100, go get the boys some new clothes or whatever. It was him that was responsible for everything. He wouldn't let me do it. He had to control every aspect of everything.
I think it was, and I think I've said this before, that was about making sure you weren't squirreling away money.
Yes, I'm sure.
Like, I remember after I got clean when I was 17, for like a year, I was on this receipt thing with my mom, and it was literally down to the fucking penny. If I was short a penny, there was questions.
Oh,
and I was like, I promise I'm clean.
Aww.
But it sounds very much like that. Like there is absolutely no trust that you're not going to do something unapproved with any money you're able to hide away.
Yeah. And surprisingly, he let me go back and get my GED, which I'm not really sure what his motive was. The only thing I can think of is I told him that I wanted to become a nurse. And I think because the main leader, his wife was a nurse, and the husband maybe saw that as an opportunity for more money to be coming in. So he let me go get my GED, and he let me start prereqs. So I was taking prereqs for nursing.
Okay.
And so the only thing I can think of why he allowed that. And so he would let me drive most of the time to class, which was interesting. I wasn't expecting that because, he didn't let me drive to work. So, but I was still pretty shocked that he even let me do that. I don't know if it was to like show me off or, like, oh, she's going to be a nurse, she's taking all, she's going to be smart. She's going to make all this money. Or if it was just because he knew that the more money coming in would be more trips he would be able to take, because he was going down to Mexico every month.
And what was he going down to Mexico for? I know we touched a little bit on him going to Vancouver and his sexual escapades while he was hanging out up there. But what was he doing in Mexico?
Preaching, visiting family.
Okay.
He would take stuff so people would pay, people would say, hey, I have a suitcase that I want you to take down to my family. And it would be just crap from the US. But down in Mexico, everything's super expensive. Yeah. So people would come and give him a suitcase and pay him like $300.
Again, that's a good racket he had going on.
And then when he came up from Mexico, he would get suitcases from people down in Mexico and he would bring it back up. And, I don't know what was in it, cheese and shit like that, and when he would get back up here, the people would come and pick up the suitcases and they'd pay a few $100s to get their suitcase. And this one time, how babies are and their ear infections, Yeah. So both of my babies, they always seem to get ear infections when they were little. And one time I was holding my son down on the bed. He was probably about 6 months old. And I'm holding him down, trying to give him his antibiotic. And he's screaming and crying because he doesn't want to take it. And I'm here trying to do this by myself because, the dad is not involved.
Assuming a man is going to help you.
Yeah. And then he comes in because he hears the baby screaming. And he starts slapping me. My glasses go flying off. And he starts hitting me and pushing me. And I kept going back and back to try to get away from him. And finally, he had backed me up against the bed. And he's just hitting me and slapping me. And meanwhile, the baby's here still on the bed screaming. And I ended up peeing my pants. I don't know, I'm not sure why. Just the fear.
Terror.
I don't know. Okay. So I peed my pants. Well, while all of this is going on, there's probably like 5 or 6 people standing in my doorway. The door to my bedroom is open. And his niece, her husband, A couple other brothers, 2 or 3 other brothers were standing there watching, and their kids watching him just beat me, just standing there watching. Like, this went on for a few minutes. And I don't know. I finally got the courage, and I'm like, you know what? Fuck this motherfucker. I am tired of this bullshit. I'm not being abused anymore. And I picked up my leg and I kicked him in the stomach as hard as I could.
How'd that go over?
Oh, he never touched me a day in my life after that. But he had a surgery on his stomach years before. And so his stomach had always been like a little sensitive. Oh. So I think it kind of scared him because,
because his weakness and you went straight for it.
He's like 130 pounds, like 5'4", 130 pounds, maybe 125 pounds. So, I've always been a little bigger girl, and I got the big legs, got the hips and the legs. And
under thighs for the win.
Yeah. So, yeah, he went flying back a little bit. He didn't fall down, but it really shook him and shocked him. And he never touched me a day again after that. Good. And after that, I was like, okay. I was like so done with that. And then shortly after that, time went on. And that's when he was, we weren't sexually active anymore. He was sleeping in the room with the brothers. There's probably in this house, I don't know, 10 to 15 brothers that were sleeping in this big room. So he would sleep there with them, which is kind of nice because I got the room to myself with the babies.
Yeah.
And then shortly after that, I'm not exactly sure why or how, or if the Hawaii leader was like, I want to sell the house. I don't know how things transpired, but he ended up saying, we need to find a house and we're going to buy a house. So we started doing house searching. Well, he couldn't be on the loan because he didn't have a job. So we ended up finding a house, and my mom and my stepdad co-signed with me on the house. And then we ended up moving to that house.
So they're still involved within the cult then?
Oh, yeah. We still have Bible studies every day.
I'm talking about your mom and stepdad.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, Dickie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They still have contact with him to this day. Yeah. I was the bad one because when I finally decided I was divorcing him, my mom kind of freaked out. She's like, you're committing sin. You're not making God happy. You're committing adultery. Like, fuck off. I'm doing me and my kids. Go take a flying shit off a cliff.
Yeah, I'm being a mother, something you can't relate to.
Like, I'm protecting so you'd rather me and my kids stay in an abusive situation where there's already sexual abuse allegations going on in this cult, and you want me to keep my kids in this place where he goes and flies off every month and leaves my little boys with all of these guys by themselves, and I have no idea he's out of the fucking country?
Well, fuck off. Because if you leave, then they look bad. Then it looks like they did something wrong sending you there, that they sent their child, their 12 or 13-year-old daughter, to an unsafe place, that your mother signed off on a marriage that should never have been able to legally happen to a man who would then go on to rape, beat, torture her daughter and her grandchildren.
Yeah. And, before we moved to our house, he had actually used my kids' birth certificates to bring up. I don't know which birth certificate he used, but he used one of the kids' birth certificates to bring up his nephew from Mexico.
So now we're getting into federal crimes, right? Isn't that like a federal crime?
Yeah. Yeah. That's human trafficking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he brought up this little boy on the airplane by himself with my kid's birth certificate. So there was that added to the pile. I mean, not that there wasn't already human trafficking going on, because back the main cult leader, there was a couple of the main leaders that had papers they would go to down to Mexico every so often, and they would do these, missionary outreach. There was a church that they were close with down in Quintana Roo in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would go down and, I don't know, hang out for like a week, 2 weeks, and then they'd come back up. And then the next thing you know, one of the main leaders would be driving down to the border in a big van, one of those Econoline vans, and they would come up, and there's like 8 to 10 new Hispanic guys that don't know any English that just came up from Mexico across the border with Coyote. And that would happen. That was how we got a lot of the members at the cult, was these smuggling trips that happened.
And there's within this cult, just based off of that, but we may have talked about it earlier, there's a huge gender imbalance here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking, what is it, like a 1 to 15 ratio of women to men?
Probably more like 1 to 30.
Damn.
Mm-hmm. So, once we're in, going back to the story, once we're into the new house, there's still the King's house still exists. There's some of the members that came to the new house with us, and they rented rooms, and they would pay rent every month. One of them was a husband and wife that were from Estacada, and they were kind of like newlyweds. They didn't have any kids, but they rented one of the rooms. And then one of the other rooms was rented by the guys. And one of the guys was a guy that I now know was sexually abusing one of the girls there. And the other guy that moved there with him, he was the guy that would go on the trips with my husband.
Oh, so he was your husband's lover?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And so once I got into that house, and I really worked a lot. There were times where I worked like 116 hours in a pay period because my work was keeping me from him.
But it was keeping you from the boys too.
Yes. And once I got some of that fresh air away from the cult and start talking with people at work and just seeing what normal looks like.
Yeah.
Then I was like, one day, I don't know what was happening. He was always an asshole, And one day I was like, you know what? I'm done. I started calling the credit card companies that were on my credit report.
Yeah.
And I was like, I never opened this credit card account. Can you send me the application that shows my signature? And so I had one of them that had sent me one that I had collected, and it was not my signature. It was him forging my signature.
Yeah.
So that was the last straw. I was like, okay, now I have proof that, what he's doing, and I know that this is him. And so that day, and I had a boyfriend at work.
Like full-blown boyfriend, or just kind of like work husband type thing?
Yeah, like a work boyfriend. I mean, we hung out 2 times outside of work. I said I was working, but then I went to his apartment.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we were intimate a couple times, but it was more like an emotional support person for me because I needed someone in my corner to give me strength.
Yeah.
So that I could, take this on. So time went on, and I was like, okay, you know what? I'm done with this. And he's kept telling me, he's like, you need to get out of this. And, he knew what was going on and everything. And he's like, you need to get away from that guy. And after getting that application with the full falsified signature on it, I was like, you know what? I'm done. So that day I decided I was done. I called the IRS to report him forging my signature when he would go do taxes. I never went to go do taxes. I don't know where he did taxes. I never went. I never signed anything. So every year he had been doing taxes. He had been just forging my signature. I'm curious, what tax accountant lets that happen? First of all, because that's illegal. Your tax accountant, both of you have to be there signing in front of your tax account. You can't just sign for your spouse. That's illegal.
I can tell you that there's shady people in every profession.
Okay, well, that was happening. So I called IRS and told them that he was forging my signature on my on the taxes. Then I called the police to tell them that I filed a police report and told them that he was forging my signature to open up credit cards. And then they didn't do shit because, of course, you know.
Of course not.
And then I called immigration and left a message and said, okay, he's bringing people up from Mexico. He's smuggling people. When they come up, they have to get on EBT card, their food stamps card, and that goes towards the house to pay back their debt for coming back. And the money from the food, the stamps have to be used for the house and until they had paid off their debt or whatever.
Hold on. So we're not just talking about human trafficking. We're talking about indentured servitude.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. And so I told him that. I told him that he had used my kid's birth certificate for Mexico and that he had coyoted or assisted coyotes. I mean, he went down and picked people up at the border and brought them up.
Yeah.
And so, and then when he came home that day, I was like, I called the IRS, I called immigration, and I called the police and filed a police report about this and this and this. And I never saw him in that house again. He left right after that and never stepped foot in that house again.
Where did he go?
To the king's house.
So the house that you buy with your parents becomes house number 4, right?
Well, I don't know if the Seattle house still existed because they were already in Hawaii. Then there were the 3 houses in Portland, and then the one Seattle house, and the one house in Seattle, and then our new house,
which was still in Portland.
Well, in Gresham, but
okay.
So 6 houses, and I don't know at what point the main leader started getting rid of some of the houses because once he left to Hawaii, the leaders kind of went in different ways.
Did it become more like now we're no longer following him? He's so far away. Each house is kind of going to be run the way that particular leader sees fit?
Yeah. There was one leader that took over a house. I don't know about the other leader. I think the other ones kind of dispersed around, I don't think they really restarted any church, but one of them did. And he's still running his church today in Portland. His cult. I call it a cult because it's still a cult. It's still the same teaching. I'm sure the same abuses are going on.
Do you know what it's called?
I don't. But it's still on Gleason Street, right by a dry cleaners.
Oh, you said a bunch of them worked at the dry cleaners,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, there was this Korean dry cleaners right across the street from the Peach House. And I don't know how many of the brothers that worked there, but they pretty much ran the place. They were the only workers the Koreans had.
Yeah. But what happened to your house after your husband left? Did you move out right away? How did you get that house out of your name?
So I couldn't pay rent, or I couldn't pay the mortgage the first month because he had already collected the rent from the other people.
And just said, fuck you.
Yep. He didn't pay the mortgage. My check had already went into the bank account and he had already taken it. So I couldn't pay the first mortgage. And then the second mortgage came up and I still couldn't make enough, I didn't have enough money. He wasn't paying any kind of anything, So I couldn't afford it. And I tried posting papers at work, like saying, looking for a roommate. But I didn't know about Craigslist or any of that, which honestly, looking back, it probably was good that I didn't try to find roommates because,
accidentally bring somebody into a cult.
Well, or, just at that point, not being able to judge character and the danger I could be putting myself and my family in, you know? So I'm glad I didn't know how to do any of that. Like I said, I didn't know about computers. I didn't know about the internet. I was still figuring all of this out. So I tried finding a roommate for a little bit, posting up papers at work and not finding anyone. Finally, I talked with my mom and my stepdad. I'm like, okay, I don't know what we need to do. I can't pay this mortgage because it's more than I make. So,
and was everybody renting still paying your soon-to-be ex-husband directly?
Oh yeah. Well, they all moved out. They all left
as soon as he left. Was that orchestrated by him?
Oh, I'm sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was just me and the boys there in this big old house.
That must have been kind of nice.
It was really nice, but it was really scary too,
Yeah.
because I didn't know what to do. Like, I mean, I had to humiliate myself one time and call him and ask him to get some groceries for the boys because I didn't have any money left over.
That's not humiliating yourself. That's asking a man that chose to create children to help fund the life of those children. It's literally the bare minimum. He should be humiliated that you had to ask.
Yeah. And so, when we had this house, he opened up a bookstore that was just a few blocks away, a Bible bookstore. And so he became the business owner and, oh, I own my business and, make him feel all special.
Yeah.
Important. Yeah, I don't know if he still has that. I kind of doubt it, but who knows?
So what did your mom and stepdad say when you were like, I can't afford this? And now all three of our names are on this house that is going to be foreclosed on if we don't figure something out.
So they found some people to rent it out. And so we did that for a while. They rented out the house. And when they found someone that wanted to rent it, well, I couldn't be there anymore. So
why not?
Well, because they were renting the whole house as a whole.
Okay.
So not like as roommate. So I had to figure out where to go with myself and my boys. And my mom and my stepdad were renting a room at the Peach House. They went back to the Peach House to, be caretakers of the Peach House while the main leader was in Hawaii.
And were your sisters with them at this point?
Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know where I'm supposed to go with my boys, and they're like, well, we can ask the leader if he'll let you rent a room in the house. This is a vacant house, except for, when they went to Hawaii, the house was still full of shit. Like there's tons of stuff that was not taken, but people wise, there might've been one other person that was renting a room, but it was just them. So they told me that, yeah, he said that I could rent a room with my boys. So they gave me one room to share with my boys in this vacant house.
Yeah.
So I ended up moving back there.
And had you already started the divorce process?
Yes. That was the first thing I did. And before I told him that I was done, I called immigration. Before all that happened, I had already made a secret bank account because I knew that was the only way I was going to ever be able to have any money for anything. I'm like, if I'm going to leave him, the first thing I want to do is be able to divorce him.
Yeah.
Because I don't want him going around still saying that I'm his wife and, priding me around and, oh, we're going to get back together. No, fuck you. I'm not having anything to do with you. So that was the first thing I did was get an attorney, and every paycheck, like I said earlier, the last episode, I had $20 going into this bank account, secret bank account, each paycheck. And so by the time I was like, okay, I'm done, I had enough saved up for an attorney.
Okay.
And so I went and did all the paperwork, and we did shared custody. And I got screwed over in a lot of ways just because I was stupid and I didn't know how to fight for myself,
You weren't stupid, and I'm going to need you to be a whole lot kinder to yourself. No, I'm serious. You didn't know what you didn't know. You'd spent, at this point, 20 plus years, either raising yourself or being told what you can and can't do, being told who you are and who you're not, being told what you like, what you don't like, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. You were not yet an individual.
Yeah.
You were still a product of the cult,
mm-hmm.
of control methods. So just be nicer to yourself. You just didn't know what you didn't know.
Yeah, true. Thank you. So I was living there for a while, and I think the divorce was final in April or May. And my soon-to-be next husband was also renting a room there. And that's where I met the second crazy ex-husband.
So before we go there, I really want to touch on what was going on inside of you as you're getting ready to exit this relationship and after you're finally divorced. I know there was a lot of very strict rules that were set down, but can you tell me a little bit about what it meant within that cult to be a wife, a mother, a woman? What were you told to be, and how did that affect you trying to leave that first marriage?
Well, you're always, you're taught to obey, to be obedient, to be submissive, to, pretty much do whatever your husband says. You're his slave. You cannot question anything. You don't think for yourself. You have to be at his beck and call. If he wants you to go make something for him at 4:00 in the morning, you better get your ass up and go do it, or you're going to get beat.
Yeah.
Just your autonomy, you're not you. I felt like I was just living in the shadows. No one, it didn't feel like anyone cared about me. No one cared about my well-being or how I was doing or how my boys were doing. It's just kind of like on autopilot. You're going about your day, like just on autopilot, just trying to fall under the radar, not get in trouble for anything, not get beat for anything, be as good as you can so that way you don't get in trouble.
Yeah. So who were you when you left? What did you feel like?
Scared.
Did you feel free at all, or did it just
No.
feel?
No, I didn't feel. It didn't feel like I thought it was gonna feel. I felt there was gonna be more of like a free feeling, but I think it's because I still had such close ties to the cult. Like,
You were still living there.
yeah, I was living in the Peach House. I was paying rent to my mom, who then was giving it to the main leader. I still didn't know anything about being an adult. I barely had, I had my job. And so I knew how to work, like go to work, do your thing, be a good person, treat people nice, and go back home and take care of your kids and feed them and go to bed and repeat, rinse and repeat. That was just rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. It was just a cycle of hopelessness. And, just he was good at intimidating me. He would always intimidate me. One day, someone was sent to break the windows in my car. Yeah. So it was really scary, because when you're controlled and told what to do, you're like, you don't know you don't know how to function on your own.
No, you don't.
Because everything is dictated for you. It's like people that come out of jail when they've been in jail for, 20 plus years.
Yeah.
Like, they have rehab homes for those people, It's the same kind of situation. You don't know how to function as an adult because you don't know who you are. You don't know anything about adulting,
It's crazy you mentioned that. My husband's uncle was in prison for 20 some years, and he got out. He's like, how do people do this? How do you go to work? You figure out when you're going to eat. You figure out what you're going to eat. You pay your bills. There's phones now. What the fuck is going on?
Mm-hmm.
It's scary and terrifying. It's like,
yeah, no, I have an uncle like that. He's actually in jail for murder. And his whole life, starting back in 91, has been nothing. I, pull up his record, and he's my stepdad's brother. And, nothing but felony charges, drug charges,
He just came from a great family, didn't he?
Yeah. And now murder charges, so people that have been away their whole life and every aspect of their day controlled, you just fall back to what you know.
Yeah. How did you view relationships after that? I know you said you kind of had a work boyfriend. What happened with that?
Oh, I ended that. I was like, okay, I'm done with what I needed. Yeah, I mean, he backed me up and he gave me the inner strength to do what I needed to do, and I didn't need to bother with him anymore. I mean, I just needed a friend. That was all I needed.
Yeah.
I didn't need anything romantic. I just needed a support person.
Yeah. And what was your self-esteem like? Because I can try and put myself in your position, and I think I know how I would feel.
Yeah, I didn't have any self-esteem until just a few years ago.
Yeah, that's how I would have felt too. I would have felt like the biggest piece of shit on the entire planet.
Yeah. Buck helped me find my self-esteem.
Yeah.
But I didn't really have any.
Do you think that's maybe how you ended up with asshole number 2?
Yeah, that, and he was from the get-go. I should have seen the red flags, but he was very manipulative as well, and like there was a red flag, and I should have, if I would have known better, then I would have known that, hey, this person is not a good person. But he felt like he was a safe person. He would keep me safe because he was muscular and he was like this tough macho guy. He would break anyone's neck if he needed to.
Oh, so he was outwardly violent.
Not that I had seen yet.
Okay.
But he was like one of those tough macho guys.
No.
A 5'2" tough macho guy. It's funny, they like keep getting shorter and shorter. Except for Buck. I finally went this tall. Way.
Thank God.
Yeah, so he felt like a safe person, which was what I was looking for. I needed to feel safe, especially, with the prearranged husband, but yeah, that was not a good situation.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys got together pretty quickly after your divorce, right?
Oh, yeah. I was pregnant. Like, we were dating. I was pregnant within the month. Like, we were dating only a month, and I got pregnant.
And this is with the oldest girl, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love her.
I know, me too. If you're listening, we love you.
We do. We love both of you.
I'm hoping they come for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I want to see them. Oh, this will be way after Thanksgiving. So I hope I saw you guys.
So, yeah, that kind of, is all of that and that marriage in a nutshell, kind of,
And then you're right off the heels of that, right off the heels of breaking off something with someone at work and it's not uncommon to be in an abusive relationship and seek something outside just to kind of give yourself, like you said, that strength to go, there is something else out there. It doesn't have to be this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But then you fall into the hands of yet another predator.
Mm-hmm. Maybe worse. I think worse.
He was definitely
he was
worse. And the thing about people like that is it's like they can smell it on you. Like they can smell that you're broken.
Yeah, you're an easy target.
You are. And you're so open and you're so trusting and you are so just transparent. Not in a negative way, but just very, he definitely saw that and sunk his claws right into you and made sure you stayed by getting you pregnant.
Mm-hmm. Had to drop school, no longer be a nurse, no longer go into the gym. But you guys will hear more about that.
Yeah, I think...
Be ready for, Molotov cocktail, escape from Mexico.
First, we got to get there. First, we got to marry this asshole.
Yeah, no, but stay tuned. There's lots of excitement coming.
Yes, and it'll be either me or Buck or a mixture of us both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Until next time, guys, again, make sure you're taking care of yourselves. I forgot to remind you at the beginning, drink your water, call a friend, take your meds, do some meditation, do something for yourselves.
Learn to love yourself.
Yes. Or at least fake it till you make it there.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.